Hello everybody, thanks for joining today for this new webinar. My name is Lionel Palassin and I'll be your presenter today. Today we're gonna focus on the benefits of deploying Bonita BPM into AWS. So first, I will present you or I will give you an overview of what is a Bonita solution by giving you some concrete example of our customer projects. Then I will go a little bit more in details about how we build application using Bonita platform and what can be the challenges related to implementing application and deploying them to make them available to the end users. And then I will use that as a transition to basically introduce you the tooling we put in place to deploy Bonita BPM server into AWS and show you what are the benefits and how you can actually handle some of the deploying challenges that we can have. And finally, I will give you a live demo of the tooling we put in place to deploy Bonita BPM server in AWS. So the webinar will be recorded and it will be shared at the end of the session with everybody. If you have any question, please type them in the question box and I will take some time at the end of the session to answer all of them. Okay, so Bonita BPM platform, the best way I think to introduce it is to give you a concrete example that we can see with our customers. By example, we have a customer in the UK called Rightmove who saved a lot of time to process their customer requests that were coming in by implementing an application with Bonita, which is process-based, to actually being able to dynamically assign the customer requests that were coming in to the specific team. So using an application like Bonitasoft, they were able to quickly reduce the time to process those customer requests. Another example for the coordination, it's Dorel, which is a company in France that built an application on Bonita to actually track their product from the design stage to the release of the product to their customer. So again, they build an application based on processes using the BPM methodology to design visually the whole process to track their product, which allow them to optimize basically the tracking of the product. A last example is Thomson Video Networks, who is using Bonita to basically integrate different systems. So they have different CRM systems, they have ticketing system used by the R&D, they have systems to manage the interaction with their users. And basically using Bonita, they were able to integrate all those different systems within one single application. And to do that, basically, the Bonita BPM platform use the BPM methodology. So the developer will actually design processes to implement the business logic of the application. And we also use an approach called low code. It means that we provide to the developer who build Bonita application a set of tools to basically accelerate the development time, but while we basically letting them customize any part of the application to build a unique application that fits exactly their business needs. So, by example, we will provide a Bonita Studio, which include a designer to visually draw the processes using BPM notation. They will be able to implement and connect that process to different external systems using connectors. They will be able to design the business data model using the Bonita Studio too. And also we will provide a UI designer to basically graphically design the UI part of their applications. So let's take a look to how we can deploy a Bonita application. When you build an application with Bonita, you're actually building a web application. So that application will be, once built and deployed, will be available for the end user through a web browser or through a mobile phone, through an iPad, and so on. But before we make the application available to the end user, we need to design it and to implement it. The developer will use the Bonita platform to build it, and they will basically build different parts of the application. So they will design the business data model, they will design the processes, they will design the forms that compose the application, and all those parts that we call artifacts will be built using the Bonita Studio. So the developer will generate those artifacts, and then you will be able to deploy them using the Bonita portal, which is a web application, to make them finally available to their end user. When they deploy them, different part of the application or Bonita portal, they can also add a dynamic configuration. So they will configure the application on the studio for different environments, and in the portal they will be able to actually live update those parameters in case some of the parameters of the application change. By example, if your application is connected to maybe Salesforce internally, and one day you change the credential of Salesforce, or you change the URL to access Salesforce, you don't want to redeploy the applications that are connected to Salesforce. You just want to change the parameters to connect to Salesforce. So all those steps by default are manual, so you will have to actually connect to the portal and deploy the artifacts. We provide APIs to basically automate that. So usually development team will put in place a continuous integration server to automate the deployment of those different artifacts using the Bonita BPM engine APIs. If you want to know more about that, we have an example on the customer portal, so you can connect to your customer portal and go to the knowledge base, and you can learn more about how to set up the continuous integration server. So let's take a look to what compose a Bonita BPM server. So if we start from the bottom level, we have the operating system. We are pretty much abstracted from the operating system because the Bonita BPM, it's a Java application, so it's going to run on the Java virtual machine, which abstracts completely the operating system layer. The Bonita BPM, it's a web application that the one who will host at the end of the day the application you build with Bonita, and that is a that require Java application server to run. So that's basically the 4 layers we have here, like operating system, the Java virtual machine run on the operating system, Java virtual machine will actually run the application server, which will host the Bonita BPM web application, and all the data managed by Bonita are stored in a relational database. we actually have two databases. One, what we call the runtime database, that will store all the engine-related information, and the business database that will store the information related to your application. That the data model that you will design using the Bonita BPM platform. To access the database, we will rely on the application server. So usually for performance standpoint, we will use data sources from the application server. And in terms of application server, we use either Tomcat or Wildfly. In the previous version of Bonita, we were supporting also the previous version of JBoss. So let's take a look to the challenges related to installing a server. So as you saw, like the different layer of the Bonita BPM server, we first need at least two, maybe one or two servers, so physical machine. So if it's in your enterprise, you will need maybe a VM somewhere or a natural physical machine to host the Bonita server and the database. You will need to deploy an OS, an operating system, and configure it. You will need to install one database to configure it, configure the access so the application can access it. You will have to create two schemas, one for the engine, one for the Bonita, for the business database. You will have to install the JVM on the server instance that will host the application server. Then you will be able to use the Bonita bundle. So Bonita bundle is a pre-configured Bonita server that runs either on Tomcat or Wildfly. You can download it from the customer portal and pretty much use it as it is. If your customer, you just need to add a license and configure it for your needs. And at the end, you can configure Bonita or configure the application server according to your environment. So we can see that a few steps that needs to happen. If we think about it, it's pretty much the same step that needs to happen for pretty much any Java application available on the web. Performance and scalability. When you deploy the server and people start using the application you design and deploy on the server, you might attract the attention from other teams, or the teams has different needs. They want more application. They might need to optimize the application. So you might run in the scenario where you deploy more and more applications on the same Bonita server. So you will have to scale the server. So in terms, you might have more traffic. You might have more need for more database size, and that needs that will need your team to reconfigure the server, reconfigure the database server, and so on to handle the new traffic or the new needs. If you want robustness, you might want to deploy the Bonita application server in the cluster mode. So if one node fails, the application is still available. If you deploy the application server layer in cluster, of course, you also want to deploy the database layer in cluster. So even if the database fails, the application is still available. And if you have cluster running, you probably want a load balancer to redirect the traffic to the specific nodes according to the traffic, basically. And a last challenge is the maintenance. Pretty much all the configuration and data generated by Bonita is stored in the database. So to back up Bonita server instance, all you have to do basically is to back up the database. So let's take a look to the architecture we put in place to deploy Bonita in the cloud, and how you can actually manage all the challenges we previously mentioned. So here we can see a deployment actually in cluster mode. So we'll have several instances of Bonita BPM running on EC2, which is an Amazon AWS service. They will connect to Amazon RDS for the database management layer. Here, because we're in cluster, we have another instance with a HA proxy to load balance the traffic. The end users of the Bonita application will connect through this HA proxy, and they will be redirected to one of the instances. The DevOps will connect to the same from the same endpoint to go and manage basically the Bonita BPM server. And they will also be able to monitor the health of the application running on the cloud using a monitoring tool called Zabbix. So I will come back to those different components later in the presentation. But first, let's see how we can create a Bonita instance. So I'm actually going to start run a script right now. So here I'm just open a terminal and I'm connected to our AWS instance that we run for the demo. And basically I'm gonna use that script called create Bonita cloud to create a new instance of Bonita in the cloud. So I'm running it now because it takes a few minutes. So by the end of the presentation, we will have it up and running. So what matters here is the name. So I'm gonna name my instance. I'm gonna name it Lionel Test Cloud, and I'm gonna provide an email address. So when the instance is ready, I will be notified with an email and all the information to connect to the instance. So I'm gonna run that command, and I'm gonna let it go for now. Then I'm gonna show you quickly the different tools that we're gonna use. So first, we have the AWS console. So here, if I connect to the right environment in Ireland, and I go to EC2, I can see I have already 11 running instances. So that's basically the cloud we share internally for our test. So we have different instances running in parallel on the cloud, and they use either by other team internally in Bonitasoft, or we also use it for pre-prod environments for the processes we run internally. So when my instance is ready, I will have a new entry in that table with the information about my instance. Second tool we use is Zabbix. Basically, it's a monitoring tool. So again, when my instance is ready, I will get back to this tool and show you how to use it. So let's take a look to the benefit of deploying Bonita in AWS. So first service we use is EC2. That's the one who's gonna manage basically the application server instance. So what are the benefits? First is gonna ease the provisioning. So basically we will get a virtual machine on the cloud. NOS will be pre-installed. And it will be already available for us. So that's what we call the infrastructure as a service. We can get a machine in a few minutes. It can be really interesting for testing, by example, meaning that you can, each time you want to run your unit tests on your application, you can create a machine with EC2, deploy all your application, run the test, and destroy the machine at the end of the test. Another benefit is to set up a cluster, because you can get as many machines as you want pretty much. It's going to be really easy to quickly get a cluster running in the cloud. All the network settings will be pre-configured for you, and it will be easier to get the cluster up and running. Second service from AWS we use is RDS. So that is a service that manages the database. What do we use that? By experience, when you have to manage a database system, you quickly realize that it's not an easy task. You basically need specific skills internally. You basically need a database administrator to configure the database, to maintain them, to deploy all the security updates, to realize the maintenance operations such as backup and stuff like that. So that is specific people that you need in your organization to run that. Using RDS, you basically have all the services already taken care of in the cloud. So basically, when you ask for a new database, you will get the database installed already. If you need all the security updates, the RDS will automatically update itself in the cloud. You will be able to schedule backup of your database. You will be able to recover in case of disaster and so on. And everything is available as a service. Again, the cluster will be really easy to set up because you can get as many RDS as you want. And also, AWS has a service called multi-AZ that basically offer the cluster setup for you. And also, in terms of sizing, you using RDS, you will be able to resize dynamically the size of your database according to basically the traffic you get on your application or the need of your application. The last service we use is not an AWS service because we saw like we use EC2 and RDS to get basically to help us with the deployment of the machine, to help us with performance and scalability, because the application server and database layer will be able to scale according to the traffic you need. AWS will also help with the robustness. It's going to be really easy to set up the cluster and the administration of the server. Now the last step basically is to deploy basically the Bonita server. As we saw, once you get a machine with an OS installed, what you need to do is install the JVM, get the application server configured, and deploy Bonita on this application server and configure it. To make that more easier, we basically developed internally a Bonita BPM Docker image. So this Docker image will simplify the deployment of the Bonita server by isolating Bonita from the OS, which guarantee us to execute Bonita in a controlled environment. So the Docker image we distribute is based on Ubuntu. And in this Docker image, you will already have the JVM installed, the application server installed, and Bonita deployed and pre-configured to run on this application server. Basically, all you have to do is, when you start the Docker image, to provide where is the database for this Bonita BPM server. So it's really easy in terms of deploying a new instance of Bonita BPM server. If you want to do more complex configuration, you might need to change a little bit the Docker image to handle you need, basically. So let's take a step back and let's see at the component we have now. We have the Amazon EC2 for the infrastructure and the OS. We have Amazon RDS to get database. And we have the Docker Bonita BPM for the JVM, the application server, and the Bonita. So all we have to do now to get Bonita BPM server up and running is to deploy the Docker image on the EC2 instance and to configure it to connect to the database. Seems pretty simple, but still we don't want to do that manually. So to automate that, I'm going to introduce you last component. It's called Ansible, and it's basically allow us to automate all those different tasks. So we're gonna be able to provision the EC2, so get EC2 instance up and running from AWS, create the database using RDS, install Docker on the EC2 instance, download the Docker image from Bonitasoft and deploy it on our EC2 instance. And if we are in a cluster mode, it will also create a new instance to deploy your HA proxy for the load balancing. And finally, we'll configure the Docker image and the proxy and so on, and give us access to the Bonita instance. Ansible supports different language. In our case, we are using Python to describe all those tasks. One thing really interesting about Ansible is using a module systems to describe the different tasks you have to do. So it's really modulable, and it's really easy to replace the cloud provider. So in our case, we are using AWS, but using pretty much the same script, you'll be able to use an alternative cloud provider such as Azure and so on. So we don't stick to one technology here. Everything I present to you today is pretty much applicable on a different cloud provider. Load balancing. So as I said, if you are looking at having Bonita highly available, you want to deploy it in the cluster and you want to have a proxy in front to load balance the traffic that coming to Bonita. And the tool we are using to monitor Bonita BPM, as I said, is Zabbix, and I'm gonna present you Zabbix right now. So let's take a look. To what happened here, I got a new email indicating that my instance is ready. So here in my email, I can see the URL to access my Bonita instance. So that's the one running on the cloud. You can see, and it's naming after the instance name. I have the login and password to access the technical user. So if I try to connect, yeah, basically, I'm connected as a technical user. It's a complete empty instance of Bonita BPM server, but that's the entry point basically to start defining the organization, deploying business data model, create users, and those users will be able to connect and start deploying application and start using the platform. I also get other information to connect to the engine database and the business database. If we take a look to Zabbix, so first let's take a look to the AWS dashboard. So I'm gonna go to my EC2 instances, and I should have one more running instances right here. So you can see here I have my Lionel Test Cloud instance that have been created. But here is not really interesting. What we can do, I prefer using Zabbix. It's a monitoring tool to basically get information about our instances. If I go to graph, here I can list all my different running instances. If I take a look to mine, I can have information about maybe like Bonita BPM perf. So it's basically the response time for Bonita BPM. I can get processor load. So I can get like basic information about the server, but you can also get Bonita related information, such as number of running process instances. So here I have none because I just created the information, the instance. But if I look at one application we're running internally, so that's a pre-prod for our internal instance, I can have like information about the number of running processes for a period of time. So it can be really interesting to monitor what's happening on your platform. Before I close, let's take a look to the continuous integration, because I think now it really kind of naturally come with the capability that the cloud offer, basically. Continuous integration for testing, by example, is really interesting when it comes to implement Bonita application. Because it will basically allow you to automate the test and to run the test in the same environment every time you run the test. So that's basically a golden rule when it comes to test, is to make sure that every single time you run your test suite, you run it in a similar environment. So to do that, one example we give is to basically use Ansible and to make it to use Jenkins to orchestrate Ansible to first create a test environment from scratch in AWS. Then use Jenkins to using the Bonita API build all the application artifacts from a repository and deploy them to the test instance that's available on AWS. Execute those tests using the Bonita APIs, collect the test results, display them to the QA person, and finally use Ansible to destroy the instance. So having that as a tool available in your team, I feel it's really powerful, because suddenly you will be able to automate completely the unit test on your application and get consistent test results to make sure that the quality of your application doesn't decrease over the release. And the end users really like if the quality of your application is good. So before I open for questions, let's me summarize the different benefits you get from deploying Bonita in the cloud. First, we automate completely a repetitive set of manual tasks, which is getting a new instance, installing the OS, deploying the JVM, deploying application server, installing Bonita BPM platform, getting the same thing for the database, configuring the different components of the application and so on. All of that can be automated which give you as a result the capability of getting your hands on new Bonita BPM instances in a few minutes, which can be really interesting for test purpose. He also enabled the Bonita platform elasticity, meaning that you can resize dynamically the application server or database server to handle any change in terms of needs or traffic coming to your different applications. He also helps you with the administration of the platform, so you can automate backups, all the security update on the OS and on the database will be taken care of by the cloud provider. You don't have to worry about security updates. In today's world, as we saw recently with the different virus attack, I think it's really important to think about those security aspects, and you don't want to have your IT team just forget about the last security update and have your entire system compromised. And finally, we use a standard tool, so we don't stick to one cloud provider. Docker can be used as a standalone solution to deploy in your own internal infrastructure on your own machine. You can use it to deploy to a different cloud provider such as Azure or others cloud provider, Cloud Foundry, and so on. Ansible also allow you to abstract the deployment task from the cloud provider. So on that, I will thanks you for your attention today. You can follow us on Twitter. You can visit our website. You can download the product. We have open source version if you're interested. If you want to try the solution, you can join the community, and you can go read the doc, watch other webinar. We have all the recording on our website. And on that note, I will open for questions. So you can type your question directly in the webinar tool. So I have a question. I think it was early on the webinar. There was, is there any plan for Azure? So we don't provide the tooling as today for Azure. We made a decision to start with AWS. Of course, we are open to either work with our customers to develop the same thing for Azure, or if in the near future we get a lot of requests from our customers to develop the same thing for Azure, we will definitely do it. But as today, we don't have it out of the box. Another question I have is this available for the community and subscription edition? So there is different aspects here. We have a community version of the Docker image. It's actually an official image of Docker, so you can go to dockerimage.com. I don't really remember the exact website name, but the Bonita image is an official Docker image. We also have a subscription version of our Docker image for our customers. The tooling to deploy in the cloud will be available only for our customers. We won't have a community edition for the tooling. Will you be providing the baseline Ansible scripts to deploy and configure on AWS? So it will be provided to our customer as part of the Bonita Cloud Solutions package. Another question I have is, does this work with 733? So most of the components work with 733. We have a Docker image from 7.0. So I would say yes, as long as we have the Docker image available, the Ansible script is dynamic enough to deploy it on the cloud. I would say you probably need at least a 730, because before the 730 we still have the Bonita Home. So we had a dependency on the file system, which made the deployment of Bonita BPM more complex on the cloud. But since the 7.3.0, we don't have any dependencies on the file system anymore. It's all on the database. So I think it should work with the 7.3.3. But I would always suggest to go for the most recent version of Bonita to get the last update, of course. I guess another question, is the image already available in AWS? So basically, I think you're talking about Docker image. Docker image is available on Docker website and on our website. In AWS, we just use it as a support to get the EC2 RDS and to deploy the Bonita BPM server instance. I have another question here. Will you support Heroku as a cloud solution? Something that Azure, we didn't identify it yet as a potential platform for our customers. So again, if we get into the conversation with our customer or the community about the need of deploying Bonita BPM solution in Heroku, we will definitely look at it or work with the community or customers to see how we can do that. Another question is, what are the APIs used to automate the deployment of the different artifacts? So you can find this information. It's all documented in the documentation website. So you go to documentation.bonitasoft.com and you can find a documentation about the APIs used to build the artifact using the Studios API and deploy those artifacts once they build to your Bonita BPM server. Any other questions, guys, today? Yes, I will. I will share the recording of the webinar with the Q&A. So that's as we speak. The webinar is getting recorded, so I will share that with you. Give me a day or two just to edit the video and upload it and make it available for you. You will get an email with the summary of this webinar and the link to the video. If you don't get the email, just go within a few days, go to bonitasoft.com, look for the webinars, and you find the videos available on the website. All right, on that note, I will wish you a good day or a good night, depending where you are in the world. Thanks for your attention. Don't hesitate to go on the bonitasoft.com to look for the next events. We will do more webinars coming up. We have the 7.5 coming up really soon, and we will do a lot of events related to this new version. I'm pretty excited about it. So yeah, I will keep you posted about all that, and I'll see you later. Have a good day, guys. Bye.